This week in games, mass layoffs hit the industry once again. SAG AFTRA deal seems to actually screw over voice actors, and the Elden Ring DLC might be coming earlier than expected. This is the Two Penny Gamescast. What's poppin', players? Welcome back to the Two Penny Gamescast, episode 182. I am your host, Tavin Bothel, here with my good friend and co-host. Say hello to the people, Connor Elliott.
It's true what they say, that drinking alcohol and talking about things makes you feel smarter. I can already feel it. Can you, Tavin?
No.
No?
No. How do you already feel it? Oh, the vibes.
The vibe,
The
yeah.
vibes. Got it. Off the vibes. Yeah. Connor, we've had a day, haven't we?
We have.
We have. Ladies and gentlemen, in the upcoming episode of The Piggy Bank, our casual gaming podcast that comes out every Saturday, 8 a.m. Central Time, you will be able to see the episode be abruptly ended as the fire alarm in our apartment building went off, and we had to stop recording and figure out what was going on. Everything's okay. It was a neighboring apartment unit that had a pipe burst. None of the flooding is in our unit. We're all okay. Everybody's safe and fine. Those poor people are probably pretty screwed, but, you know, that sucks, and that's life, and that's unfortunate. It is freezing in Texas, and we are not built for freezing weather down here, if you didn't know.
You know, there was a tweet sent out by our esteemed governor, Senator Ted Cruz, who said, hey, you know, deal with the cold, or you can come to me with Cancun. That's how you... It's funny in the sense of it being true. It's pathetic.
Wait, did he really tweet that?
I'm not joking.
This year he tweeted
This
that.
year, a couple days ago.
Are you fucking serious?
I am not.
Tried
joking.
to make a joke out of that.
Yeah. It's like, I don't think those people, it is true, when those people don't realize that they're even hated to begin with, well, they probably know that, but they don't realize it's because they see themselves as being so above everybody else. That comes in the forms of being able to take, you know, money to serve interests that aren't his constituents, and also when they do things like this, where they go to Cancun. Because for anybody who's not Texan, they wouldn't know that during one of the last freezes that happened, he left the state with his family.
The big one 2 years ago.
The big
2 years
one.
ago? 3 years ago.
I think it was 2. Regardless of when it was, he just left. And he got so much flack for it, he had to come back, as he should have been here in the first place for. But, you know, it's a perfect encapsulation of the kinds of people we always seem to talk about on this show. And this episode's no different, because unfortunately there was a lot of layoffs again, as there is every single damn week. And it's the same kind of people. So now we get to talk about them again.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to remind you that 2024 is, in fact, an election year. Do your civic duty and please register to vote. Make sure you're all good and go to the polls, because certain people are totally okay with having us freeze to death in the cold while they take trips to Cancun. And if that's who you want representing you, totally fine. But that's a choice that may not be the wisest to make. So consider your options deeply and seriously. And let's talk about video games, you know, because this is the Two Penny Gamescast. Each week, me and Connor come to you with the new news you need to know concerning the video game industry. We each come to you with 2 topics, 2 pennies, if you will, and we give you our 2 cents on them. This week is quite a heavy one, but we end on a possibly high note, at least on an exciting note. So stick with us as we get through all the rough news, and then we'll talk about some fun Elden Ring stuff. You know what I'm talking about?
I'm down
Time
for
codes
it.
are down in the description if you just want to skip right to that, because we are talking about some shit that we've been talking about every week for the last, I don't know, 20 weeks in a row. It feels like it's just ridiculous, the amount of times we have to do this, but it is what it is. Remember, last week we were supposed to upload an episode of our Mario 64 Game Club review. The Game Club is, of course, our monthly video game book club in which me, Connor, and our good buddy Phil joins the show to review a game of yours selected by the wheel, or now one of us, as you will find out in that episode. So make sure you go and watch that review. The original recording we had was bust. It was no good. go check it out. It's on YouTube right now, youtube.com/@2pennygames, where you can find this show every Monday at 8 a.m. Central Time, youtube.com/@2pennygames, and mainstream podcast services of your choice. I might stick the Mario 64 at the end of this episode, but I may not. You know, it just depends on how long we run today. And honestly, you should just go watch that review because it's legitimately one of our best reviews that we've ever done. Great conversation, great discussion. Even how we had to re-record it. Honestly, I think the video is better for it. I think it's a better video because of the re-recording of it. So please go make sure and check that out and watch that. We really do appreciate it. And of course, subscribe to all of our socials and our TikTok. Links are in the description down below. So make sure you check all of that out. And make sure to leave a comment on what penny or topic of conversation you, the audience, may have. We would certainly love to have an audience discussion on the show. Have y'all bring forward your 2 pennies, your 2 cents, of course. So make sure you write down in the comments below what you would like us to talk about. Make sure you leave a like and share with a friend. We do really, really appreciate that. But Connor, it's time to get on with the news. The reason we are all here, and unfortunately, our first 3 topics of the day will not be fantastic, but we are going to move into your first penny, your first topic of the day. Go ahead and please take it away for me, good sir.
Well, as I said at the beginning of this show, it's another layoff episode. Embracer has laid off a sizable portion of Gearbox support studio Lost Boys Interactive. This is from Chris Scullion over at Video Game Chronicle. Lost Boys, which was founded in 2017, is a support studio which has worked with Gearbox on a number of projects, including Borderlands 3 and Tiny Tina's Wonderland. In 2022, the studio was acquired by Gearbox, which in turn is owned by Embracer Group, and saw its staff grow to over 400 people following the acquisition. However, as reported by Aftermath, the studio was hit on Friday with numerous layoffs. Although it's not yet clear exactly how many employees have been laid off, former studio producer Jared Pace posted on LinkedIn that it had been a, quote, a sizable portion, including himself. Quote, still trying to understand the scope of it all, he added, but sadly, this is a song and dance we're all familiar with. Embracer announced in June 2023 that it was implementing a restructuring program, which would have involved the closure of studios, layoffs, and the cancellation of some projects. It has since shut down studios like Saints Row developer Volition, Campfire Cabal, and Free Radical Design, while others have reportedly been up for sale, such as Borderlands maker Gearbox. During its second financial quarter, ending in September 2023, the company made more than 900 layoffs, with cuts impacting such studios as Crystal Dynamics, Beamdog, Zen Studios, and Fish Labs. Last month, Embracer also made layoffs at New World Interactive, 3D Realms, and Slipgate Ironworks. Job losses across the games industry were widespread in 2023 and don't appear to be slowing this year. And considering how every single week we've had at least one layoff to discuss, it has not, and it will not. Tavin has been keeping a record of the amount of people laid off. This is it's one where you don't know the exact number, at least right now, but considering they're using the word sizable a lot, it's probably a pretty big chunk. And this is off the backs of them making Tiny Tina's Wonderland last year, which to my knowledge sold well, and yet these layoffs come regardless, which is the continuation of the trend we're all familiar with by now.
Yeah, so I've yet to update my growing list of video game layoffs this year. I've yet to update it from this story since I don't have a full number. I'm gonna just put some question marks and say, what is it called? The Lost Boys Interactive. Mm-hmm. Okay. And / Embracer.
Mm-hmm. And Embracer has been responsible, as you can tell from the article, a lot of these layoffs. And that's a byproduct of having this large mega corporation just buy and buy and buy game studios because they see that as a financially sound thing to do because video games make as much money as they do. But due to the nature of how games work nowadays, with the layoffs, those always come seemingly afterwards. Of course, sometimes things with like Saints Row Volition, they hadn't put out a game in quite a while. Their last game flopped pretty hard, but here's a game that did not, and yet we still see a layoff.
We had a Saints Row game in 2022.
Was that when it was released?
I think so. 22, 23.
Either way, it didn't do well.
22.
22?
Yeah.
You just decided that off the top of your head?
Pretty sure it was 22.
Well, regardless of when it was, layoffs ensued, and the quality of the games released don't matter. They consistently have not mattered. And unfortunately,
record-breaking sales and profits don't matter either. Nothing
not.
seems to matter. Now, this is Embracer. It's tied or it's tied to Embracer, who had record numbers of layoffs last year. All of this because of their Saudi Arabia deal that fell through,
presumably
with Savi Games. I mean, you can tie it. You can pretty clearly tie it to that because they came out and said, "Hey, this will drastically affect our situation," and lo and behold, it has. And,
not on their end, of course.
Yeah, and so it just continues to spell the tragic tale of like what happens when these big conglomerates come in who may or may not actually understand this industry and how it works, or when money grubby, selfish pieces of garbage CEOs come through and are just trying to fatten their own pockets or their friends' pockets and not look out for the thousands of people that work under them. And they get too ambitious and grow too fast and do too much and have ridiculous budgets and force studios to work games that they're not prepared to make or are not passionate about, and then don't see record sales from these things, or and how they refuse to take cuts and so forth, and how these workers really just don't have the rights and the cachet to be able to fight for themselves. We're going to go ahead and jump pretty soon here. We're going to jump into our second topic because it's the same thing, and report on that. But it like to focus on Embracer here specifically. Like, this is going to be the wives' tale that will haunt the industry forever, of how we let this conglomerate come in, acquire all these studios, acquire all this talent, and then completely throw it all away. And make a deal that just completely destroyed so many lives in this. So many people are going to have to pick their families up and move somewhere else or quit the industry altogether. These are people who are passionate, who have wild dreams, and who are insanely creative and hardworking, and all of them are being thrown away. And it's disgusting because it was just all based on a deal that fell through with a country with a questionable reputation at best.
Verifiably bad reputation.
Yeah, and to make this deal and to just be so obviously focused on the money, and we don't see removal of these executives. We don't see pay cuts happening from these executives. We barely got. We didn't even really get an apology from their little press conference that they held when the deal fell through. In any ways, there just doesn't seem to be any remorse happening from the upper branches of leadership here, and it just continues to be fucking disgusting, and to see it keep happening. And it's so exhausting constantly talking about it and constantly being outraged at these things and upset at these things. And so few people seem to care.
What we've done on this show is focus on stories whenever we hear them. We make it a duty of ours to talk about it, to let you guys know about all of these things that are going on. And it's a perfect encapsulation of how this entire issue has been treated, because we talk about it constantly. I see people on Twitter constantly talk about it. And then there's no real reprisal, so they have no incentive to stop doing it. They just do it again because their games keep making money. The government doesn't step in and prevent them from just laying off left and right. Because, I mean, I brought it up before at another time that Embracer was canceling one of their many studios. Lars Wingefors has a net worth of $1.1 billion. That doesn't mean he's getting that much for his role at Embracer Group as the CEO, but he's certainly getting paid a pretty penny. And we never, ever hear about a pay cut that comes from these kinds of people. I'm going to cover it in the next story that we're talking about, but there is a avenue to stopping this from happening to the rate it does. One of which is, of course, unionization, which is kind of what people generally jump to when they're trying to come up with solutions. But there are other paths to it, something called sectoral bargaining. For the sake of, we've already talked about this extensively already. We're going to talk about it again with the next story. And so stay tuned for that, because I'll be covering possibly another avenue. Actually, the best avenue to try and stop this thing from happening, though it is a difficult task.
Exactly. And so with that, we're going to jump into our second topic of the day, my first penny of the day. Discord lays off 170 people, becomes latest company to say it grew too much during the pandemic and now needs to be, quote, more agile. This is from Andy Chalk over at PCGamer.com. Just one day after streaming service Twitch announced that it was laying off 500 employees, which we did cover last week on last week's Two Penny Gamescast episode, Discord has joined the parade. A report from The Verge says the company is cutting 170 employees, representing 17% of its workforce. A Discord representative confirmed with PC Gamer that The Verge's report is accurate. Discord is an extremely popular social media platform, but CEO Jason Citron said in a memo sent to employees today that the company's employee count has increased by 5 times since 2020, and that, quote, as a result, we took on more projects and became less efficient in how we operated. Today, we are increasingly clear on the need to sharpen our focus and improve the way we work together to bring more agility to our organization, Citron said. Quote, this is what largely drove the decision to reduce the size of our workforce. While difficult, I am confident this will put us in the best position to continue building a strong and profitable business that delivers amazing products for our users and supports our mission for years to come. Discord doesn't appear to be facing any immediate financial difficulties. The Verge report says the company has raised roughly $1 billion in funding and is currently sitting on more than $700 million in cash. But while the company's valuation has skyrocketed, a CNBC report pegged it at $15 billion in 2021, following a $500 million funding round up from a $3.5 billion valuation in 2020. Profitability has apparently remained elusive. One source told The Verge that Discord hopes to become profitable this year. Citron concluded his, quote, no hard feelings email by saying that he hopes the no hard feelings is a good touch. Excuse me.
For him.
Yeah. Is that a quote? Wait, is that a quote in the thing, or is that something that Chalk is adding? I thought that's what Chalk was adding. Anyways.
It almost seems like it's not, though.
By saying that he hopes working on Discord reinforced the idea that friendships, quote, can be sustained and even strengthened beyond the walls of any one workplace, which is exactly the opposite of the kind of thing I'd want to hear while packing my desk after unexpectedly being told that I no longer had a job. That great editorialization.
I'm starting to think the no hard feelings bit was
the Chalk is doing a great job here, man. I love it. Packing my job. There's been some seriously tone-deaf messaging from executives following layoffs. Twitch CEO Daniel Clancy reassuring everyone that putting 500 people out of work means, quote, we can continue to serve our streamers sustainably without impacting their ability to support their careers, leaps to mind. And of course, the Embracer Group guy describing hundreds of jobs lost and multiple studio closures as, quote, how we win was a rare banger. Chalk is fucking killing this. Everybody go give him a read over at PC Gamer. Great work there, my friend. But we're gonna go ahead and take the rule there. But everyone go give him a read and follow it up because it's a great reporting here. But I mean, this is a great example. As Connor mentioned before, I've been keeping a tally ever since the beginning of the year of how many jobs have been lost. Let it be known, ladies and gentlemen, we are recording on January 15th, 2024. That is when we are recording. Reportedly, 9,000 jobs were lost last year over the course of the entire year in the games industry. That reporting is a little vague. You know, depending on who you go to, the count is different to everyone. What I've seen, it's been anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 jobs have been lost in the games industry. My research showed 9,000, somewhere in the 9,000 range. January 8th, 1,800 layoffs at Unity, 25% of their workforce. January 9th, a day later, 500 reported at Twitch, 35% of their workforce. And then now, January 11th, 170 at Discord, 17% of their workforce. And as we just covered, January 15th, an unknown amount from Lost Boys Interactive, owned by Embracer. This continues to be a disgusting trend that is going on and on and on, and it desperately needs to stop. We desperately need to find a way to stop the bleeding. As of right now, with the unknown number from Lost Boys Interactive, this year alone, we have lost over 2,470 jobs. Someone I'll do the math right here, Connor, while you bring up your next topic of discussion on this topic.
Yeah, to begin with, like the Twitch story we covered last week, this isn't directly tied to a video game company, as we tend to cover on this show. It's video game adjacent. And we're seeing the same exact trend here. And as the article lays out, it's pretty iffy on whether they're turning a profit or not based off they've, made a lot of money. Whether they were able to, put that in their pocket and keep it for a rainy day remains to be truly seen. That's something that would be their problem rather than the workers who they're clearly, causing to get screwed over here. Which, as I've said in the last thing we covered on this topic involving the Lost Boys Interactive, unionization is typically the idea that's brought up to prevent these things from happening, or at least happening in the way that they do, where you're able to lay off 17% of your workforce, which is, 170 is bad.
Yeah.
But when you put it into perspective of the company as a whole, it's even worse. And with something like Discord...
To put it in, to continue with that percentage number, 30% of the number we lost last year, 30% of all those jobs has happened in the first 15 days of this year. So, I don't understand how you cannot paint that this is a growing issue that needs to stop. The bleeding needs to stop.
And I recently was trying to get a friend to watch my playthrough of a game that we're doing currently, and I have it on PS5. And so there's this very convoluted process of, even though Discord is on PS5, I have to go get a remote play on a PC and do it through there, and the quality isn't good. I ditched that instantly. But looking at PS5, and admittedly, this could be something that's held up by Sony because they notoriously...
I'll say real quick, you can just grab my capture card.
Oh.
Like, whenever you want it, you have free use of it, man.
Oh.
Like just whenever. Where's
Well,
the button I need?
that's good.
There it is.
It's good to know. But
yeah,
Discord itself has a lot of functions that could be covered through that on your phone, on your PC, but not on PlayStation. It's very bare bones there. And so I feel like, you can have people work on that to justify not laying off 170 people. Discord's notorious for doing really small, stupid changes that aren't very substantial. Maybe focus less on those and do things that are way more impactful to your UI instead of just doing frivolous things that you decide to change on a whim. But to bring it back to the layoffs of people, there is an alternative to unionization, and it's something that's not very common over here in the US, but has seen a lot more success over in Europe because it's easier to do, and that is called sectoral bargaining. I am not a person who is the best at speaking, despite being on a podcast. I stutter a lot, and that really only comes into play in a negative way when we're dealing with complex topics, especially ones that I'm not very well versed in off the top of my head. And sectoral bargaining is one of them. So I'll be drawing directly from a group called American Progress. This one is from the website American Progress Action, where the full report, the full article was done. It is about sectoral bargaining, titled "What is Sectoral Bargaining?" by David Madland. To give some verification of who he is, he's a senior fellow at the American Progress Action. And he wrote in combination with Malky Wall, couldn't find any information on her. Here's quickly what it is. Sectoral bargaining, also known as multi-employer, industry-wide, or broad-based bargaining, is a form of collective bargaining that provides contract coverage and sets compensation floors for most workers in a particular occupation, industry, or region. While broad-based bargaining can and sometimes does occur in the United States, current labor laws emphasize enterprise-based bargaining in which unions negotiate with individual employers on behalf of a group of workers at a particular work site. For example, a union might negotiate with a supermarket chain on behalf of workers at a particular store, or with a building service company on behalf of janitors in a specific building. With sectoral bargaining, collectively bargained standards extend to every grocery store worker or janitor in the region. Although both enterprise-based and sectoral bargaining raise competition and reduce inequality, sectoral bargaining offers several advantages over worksite-level bargaining that make it well-suited for the modern economy. That is, the current enterprise-based system makes joining a union and bargaining very difficult. Today, less than 12% of workers are covered by a collective bargaining agreement, even as roughly half of workers say they would like to join a union. Side note, the video game industry is notably under-unionized, and it's incredibly hard to do so. One of the most famous examples in recent history is Raven Software, someone who works for Blizzard, having their QA testers form a union. And as you can imagine, that's extremely small. It's good, but extremely small. Moreover, current labor laws leave out millions of workers, many of whom are women and people of color. The protections of the National Labor Relations Act, for example, exclude domestic workers, agricultural workers, and independent contractors. And in some fast-growing industries, including food service and retail, layers of contracting make traditional union organizing and bargaining challenged. So some of the benefits are it increases coverage, closes racial and gender pay gaps, reduces economic inequality, boosts economic productivity, and to achieve it in the United States, this is a very U.S.-focused podcast because, surprise, we live in the United States. But it strengthens unions. You can extend union contracts and change current labor laws. Those are the main ways to achieve sectoral bargaining. So that I don't confuse anybody and go farther into the reaches of stuff that I can't explain properly, I'd recommend you go research it yourself. I need to do the same exact thing.
So the general idea is that it instead of it being individualized to individual unions or companies, this allows more on a federal level, whether state or nationwide, for certain entire regions to follow under these same rules due to the results of whatever bargaining that happens there. So it would give more power to activists and workers and unions in that sector, as opposed to each individual one having to fight for their own individual rights.
And that is true. The challenge that I found in my own research is even trying to look at basic things on how to implement it. Laws already are written in a way to be very confusing, to be very focused on people who study law so they can discuss it amongst themselves. Whether this actually has any practical purpose, I don't think so, but I don't know, ultimately. So it makes it very difficult, but current laws by the United States government would have to change to allow for easier sectoral bargaining. Once again, I'm unfamiliar with how it is over in Europe, but I know it's way, way, way more common, especially I think in the more of the Scandinavian countries, though I'm kind of talking out my ass on that one, which is why I referred to the article rather than my own words. But ultimately, the point is, whether it comes in the form of sectoral bargaining, which is the loftier, grander ideal, or in the form of unions, which are, in place of something like that, just as effective on a smaller scale. That's what needs to be advocated for. And doing so is way harder. Because I could say here, do it. Yeah. And it sounds all peppy, but then you go back to your job and it's way hard to do.
Yeah.
So
life is hard. Adding on somebody else's problems to your thing or
Yes.
caring about that is a hard task to do. And that's why representation matters so much in law and in government. And it's why, once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to remind you that 2024 is in fact an election year. And if you are in the United States and you're watching and listening to this, please go make sure that you are registered to vote, and please get acquainted with what is up for stake this year. It is incredibly important. It is very easy to just sit back and feel like, oh, they do what they want year after year. We don't have any real power for X, Y, and Z reasons. If you show up and you vote, you do have that power. The numbers do matter. That was proven in 2020. It's been proven in the past. It was proven in 2016 when there were not as many people voting than there probably should have been. And then when they came out in record-breaking numbers in 2020, we found some results in that. Now, 4 years later, what are those results? They're limited and they're frustrating. Change is slow, always has been, always will be. But if you give up the fight, or if you stop participating in government, that is when your rights, that is when your pursuit of happiness, that is when your general quality of life will decrease. It's not a theory. It's not me just saying it. These are proven facts that we've seen again and again. And Connor, you're talking about individual companies and individual unions struggling to catch up and struggling to fight for their own increasing rights. This was proven already with our third topic of the day, my second penny of the day. right here. SAG AFTRA's new agreement lets game devs use AI voices. This is from Justin Carter over at GameDeveloper.com. Studios working with voice technology company Replica Studios are now permitted by acting and performance union SAG AFTRA to use voices replicated by generative AI in their games. Per The Hollywood Reporter, the union and Replica struck on an agreement letting developers, AAA and otherwise, to, quote, access top SAG AFTRA talent and for actors to, quote, safely explore new employment opportunities for the digital voice replicas with industry-leading protections. The Guild says that the agreement set terms and conditions for the use of AI-generated voices and requires voice actors to consent for their use of their voices and negotiate further terms of use when working with the studio. Replica Studios will be required to allow performers to opt out of continued use of their voice in new works. The contract covers over interactive media and spans from pre-production to final release. The agreement was revealed at CES 2024. Just a day prior, it was revealed that Ubisoft and Tencent were using NVIDIA's AI-generated ACE toolset, which lets studios create generative NPCs. The use of AI voices has been heavily debated in video games. Voice actors in the past revealed contract clauses that wanted them to sign over their voice rights, and they're overall not a fan of the technology. At present, Embark's The Finals is a game that uses AI voices in its entirety. Voice actors believe it may only be a matter of time before that becomes the norm in the industry. SAG-AFTRA National Executive Director and Chief Negotiator Duncan Crabtree Ireland said the agreement secures actors' consent and negotiation for digital voices. It's also required that actors can't be allowed to opt out of AI being used in new works. Quote, "This agreement is about voice replication in video games," said Crabtree, New Ireland. That's his last name? Holy shit. Anyways, quote, "Voice actors are on cutting edge of the implementation of AI and the risks that come with it." Replica CEO Shreyas Nivas said the agreement lets studios use its platform using its platform can only access the company's technology and on talent that have given express permission for their voice to be used for training. He went on to say the agreement, quote, introduces on ethical approach. He went on to say the agreement, quote, introduces an ethical approach to the emerging use of generative AI. This is exactly what we're talking about. Is each individual group has to fight for themselves. Sometimes the union you're signed to won't even help you because you're in a subgenre of your industry or a subgenre of your group. Voice actors have always been looked down upon in terms of their skill, their talent, their work, the effort that goes in. This has always been a problem. I remember 2016 voice actors going on strike to get rights in the recording process, and that was a whole big debate on if they were even worthy of doing that because of the dev studios and the animation studios who have to work so hard and how they don't have their own personal work rights going on. This is a group collective effort. It requires everybody to participate, everybody to make sure that their voices are heard. What is the point, SAG-AFTRA, of spending all of last year on strike so that your actors and so that the writer in supporting the Writers Guild of America on their strike, which again, I do fully support, and I'm glad that they got the progress that they wanted in this, but then to turn right around and stab your fellow actors in the back. What was the point?
To your point, the initial point you made about voice actors being undervalued in our society for what they do with art. Some people I think that people always criticize is, let's take the Mario movie, for example. The main names in that movie were big name actors that you can recognize from other films. I didn't see that movie. I'm assuming they did a good job, but voice actors...
It was a good movie.
It was a good movie. Well, voice actors are still voice actors, and they seemed, from my perspective on the outside, were kind of left out of the main roles in that film, and were just, given to the big names like Chris Pratt, to like Seth Rogen. He was the donkey, right? He was Donkey Kong?
Seth Rogen was Donkey Kong,
yeah.
Yes.
So,
listen, you're making a Hollywood blockbuster film. So that specific example, I understand. You want big names. You want people to come sit in the theater. Nobody in the general populace of America is not buying a movie ticket because Charles Martinet has a new role in the Mario movie or something like that. Now, granted, Charles Martinet was given plenty of
due respect in that movie, and I think it worked out very well. I think Chris Pratt was, upon casting, heavily criticized for that choice, but I think he did a good job in that movie. But at the same time, like, we're just constantly looked down on for their efforts and for their work. And motherfucker, the best movie of all time was an animated movie about a superhero that came out last year. Animated, great voice work from actors that you may or may not know. And to turn around after spending a whole year fighting studios and fighting for your personal rights to keep AI out of the arts as much as possible, because AI, more often than not, is stealing art, or stealing what would be a job filled by a human being, to then turn around immediately, and those who maybe don't have their face in front of a camera but still put in the same amount of effort, if not more, because you're stripped of other tools that an actor develops in their training, to then turn around on them, stab them in the back, and say, "Nah, you guys are a subclass of what we're going for. So these companies can use your voice, use your identity, use your agency in your artistry to do whatever they need to be done." Now, it's cool. The upside in that is that the actor does get to opt out at any time. That's great. What is stopping casting from happening, where they approach an actor, the actor is more than willing to sign on for the role, but does not want their voice to be replicated by an AI at any point? What is stopping these casting agencies, these development studios, these animation studios, whatever it is, whoever is in charge, these production companies, whoever is in charge of casting and filling jobs with human beings, what is stopping them from going, "Oh, you're not going to sign unless you aren't being used for AI? Okay, thank you for your time, but we're going to move on to something else." What is stopping that from happening? I've been reading reactions to this news all week of actors and voice actors alike who are disgusted by this part of the deal, and I can't blame them. It just feels like a betrayal in order to make an NPC in a game? Just fucking bring the guy in.
And this is a byproduct, and it's an unavoidable one, of emerging technology being introduced into spaces that didn't have them before. I was always against AI in general because I saw that the negatives far outweighed the positives. But a couple of things kind of altered my outlook on that kind of stuff. One of them is actually there's a recent story that's a good example. An AI technology was used to make it to where people speaking on like a video or whatnot, an AI translates that to American Sign Language. So where you can just, you don't have to always have a translator there translating the words as they're spoken.
I mean,
you can
again,
have one
a nice example of it would be nice if we put a human being in that role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can understand how it's not always possible or affordable in that sense, and maybe using that for that. But what is stopping these huge production companies who do have that budget to hire somebody to do that for them?
Exactly. And my experience has actually been, I remember back in, it's been I can't remember exactly, but in college I was I had something that was relating to captions. I can't remember. It was so far away, but it was harder on that small scale to be able to get those sources of things. And it seems like our camera. Okay, there we go.
No,
yeah,
we're all good.
Yeah. But the point of the matter is that there's many avenues that AI can be used for that we might not think of off the top of our head, but when it's actually implemented, can do a great deal of good work. But ultimately, you always have these kinds of stories accompanying those. And the solution to that is to crack down on the use of AI by these companies. Because at the end of the day, this is kind of one of the outcomes of when you have a government that doesn't check the companies from screwing over their workers, which is what they're clearly trying to do with AI, because it saves them a buck. And they don't really care about the negative effect that it has. And so what exactly laws could be drafted to make sure that they don't just use them to replace their current workers and undermine a portion of the job market? It's what exactly can be done. hard to say, but that's where the first solution lies. Because at the end of the day, kind of with all of the layoffs that we're talking about, we could talk about it every single week. It could be #1 trending on Twitter, but ultimately they're going to say, okay, well, what negatives are coming from this? Some bad press? Does it hurt our bottom line? Chances are no. So we'll just keep on doing it. There's no incentive to stop. And so the government is where they play the role of making it to where, okay, you can't just have free reign of this new technology to screw people over. You either have to pay them large sums of money or sums of money to use their voice, or you just don't do it. And unfortunately, the powers that be aren't really interested in talking about these kinds of things, partly because it is such a new emerging technology, and a lot of the people in our government are old fucks that can't even remember that they had to take their pills that morning. I'm not saying that just because I'm angry. I'm saying that because we have gotten reporting from doctors who deal with people on the Senate floor, on the House, who say, yeah, I give Alzheimer's medicine to certain patients. And that's terrifying when we're talking about people who form not the bedrock of our country, but definitely make up the higher tier of it, who decide how things are done and what exactly is done. And when those people are in power, they just couldn't care less about AI voices in Hollywood and in the video games industry. And it's kind of hollow because, especially this year when in the primaries that are occurring for our presidential election, there are certain people being left off the ballot because they're not more marketable enough. People like Marianne Williamson. I know that Cornel West.
Marianne Williamson, not to dive into politics here.
Sure,
Marianne Williamson is not. I don't know if that's necessarily somebody we want to root for to be.
Believe it or
on
not,
the ballot.
Way better. Like, you take a look at her specifically. She's one of the few Democratic politicians who's saying this exactly is what needs to change, and you would find yourself agreeing with a lot of it.
This is a topic for another time.
The point is elected officials are very partly responsible for the use of AI in current industries, and a whip needs to be cracked to prevent them from taking advantage of people, as this story discusses. I see something on the.
Yeah, I was more just grateful that you clarified exactly who you were talking about and what you meant, because some people are being left off the ballot in some states because they violated U.S. constitutional laws.
There are people who literally it's pretty crazy in the U.S. politics sphere. They're just being left off because we don't really want them. It's crazy.
Government's a business,
Democracy is not a business, and that's what's being undermined.
No, democracy shouldn't be a business, but it is.
Unfortunately,
when you let
when you have lots
run your thing. Man, we're getting deep into this, aren't we? Here we go.
It's connected, unfortunately. Ladies and
gentlemen, the main point is put people first. That's what matters more than anything. And just remember that if you don't step up and let your voice be heard, they will take your agency from you, and they will make that choice for you. Connor, I think we're ready to move on to our final topic of the day. Something a little less serious, a little less intense. That was great work, sir. Thank you for bringing all of that to the.
I hope I did
to the conversation here, and I think it was excellent. I think it led to great conversation. I'm actually probably gonna maybe edit it down a little bit, but I'm probably gonna break out all of that we just did and put it out for its own video. So that was
because of the alcohol.
It was great work. I mean, it wasn't. It wasn't, because if you're feeling buzzed off of that, sir.
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm strong. Look at me.
I was going to say, it's just 2 ounces of bullet. It's not that big of a deal. Anyways. You want another round when we're done with this? I want another round when we're done with this.
Well, once you start it, you have to go to a certain point.
Yeah, right? We got to start feeling something here.
Yeah.
Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, time for our final topic of the day. Connor's final penny of the day. Take it away from me, my friend.
Well, we actually have something fun to talk about. Kind of hard to have on this show week after week. But this is an IGN article from Ryan Dinsdale. Elden Ring fans ravenous for Shadow of the Erdtree announcement after back-end Steam update. I burped. Elden Ring fans have grown ravenous for a Shadow of the Erdtree expansion announcement after developer From Software made a change to the game's back-end on Steam. We have to scroll nowadays, so sometimes.
I'm not used to controlling it for him, so this is my fault. Anyways, continue.
X/Twitter, we can just call it Twitter, user and Elden Ring YouTuber Ziostorm noticed the change on Steam DB's page for Elden Ring. sharing an image of a new application added to the downloadable content section of Elden Ring's Steam page for the first time since launch. Quote, "I'm not saying it's 100% Shadow of the Erdtree, but that's a pretty good chance it is," they said, and fans are similarly hopeful elsewhere online. Announcement must be imminent, Joe Rad said on Reddit. "Definitely, it's a matter of days now, or even less," Hector_Savage_ says. This update also adds fuel to the fire of a previous rumor as a leaked collaboration between Elden Ring publisher Bandai Namco and accessory creator Thrustmaster also suggested a February release of Shadow of the Erdtree. That being said, it's not the first time Elden Ring fans have grown a bit out of hand, anticipating an announcement after growing incredibly confident about a reveal at the Game Awards 2023, an announcement that obviously never came. And
Announcement that never came, according to IGN there, man. Someone on their editing team needs to step up their fucking
Jesus,
work here,
man.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. That's an easy fix.
Fair enough. But point is, Elden Ring's Shadow of the Erdtree is on the horizon. You can kind of tell that was going to come sooner or later due to the fact that we didn't see anything besides a promotional image last year. And now that a year has gone by, it's about time we see something. February, I doubt it. They aren't really known for, at least in the past, I believe, dropping things on a moment's notice. And now that we're in the closing up to the middle of January, it'd be surprising if we saw anything like we actually are in the middle of January. Now that we're in the middle of January, having not seen anything, most likely not February, but we do have a presentation coming up. Is it going to be there? I'd say no.
You're talking the developer direct from
Developer
Xbox?
Direct, yeah. It's not,
I was just thinking about that. It doesn't feel likely.
It doesn't, no.
No. Because I feel like Xbox would much rather keep that focused on what they've got going on over there.
They need it.
There are rumors of a PlayStation State of Play or PlayStation Showcase of some kind, something happening, probably a State of Play happening here soon. So if I were to guess, probably from there, From Software's relationship with PlayStation has always been strong. Now, granted, Elden Ring is a multi-platform game, along with Armored Core 6. Right? Armored Core 6. Yeah. So there's a chance it could land there. I think that'd be a great headline title for PlayStation. I imagine that would drop sometime in February. So is it possible? Yes. Is it going to have a release date? I don't know. Feels weird to drop an update for a DLC that doesn't have a release date. They did recently, in the last couple of months or so, release a statement saying, hey, it's going to be a little while, like it's a little, or one of the directors or something said, hey, man, you know, it's
Miyazaki himself said that.
Yeah, don't expect it too soon. I would assume that was meant to just say, hey, it's not coming in 2023, is probably what I assume what that purpose of that statement was.
That's why I knew it wasn't coming during the Game Awards. You know, part of me is, of course, hopeful. I'm a nerd and From Software loser, as you can see from that thing back there. But you can barely see it.
Yeah, this is a bad shot for it. Hold on.
Hey.
I got you. Now you can barely see it in that one too.
Oh, damn it! It's the wide shot where you see it.
I don't think it's in the wide shot either.
Damn, fuck! Yeah. All right, that's
one day it'll be in the wide shot. It'll be up there one day. We're troubleshooting the new set.
Point is, it wasn't coming last year. I'd be surprised if it didn't come this year. You know, they clearly are putting a lot of work into this DLC. I think comparative to the old Hunters DLC from Bloodborne, one of the greatest DLCs ever made, they came out with it not too far after the initial release. This one, I think they'd be going for something more ambitious, considering what Elden Ring is. And they'll probably add a whole other new world that you can go to. Who knows what the hell they're
I'm
doing.
expecting a scale on the level of a Witcher 3...
Blood and Wine. Yeah.
Blood and Wine. Thank you. I wanted to say Blood and Truth, and I'm like, that's not it.
I know that so intrinsically. Just the name. I've never played the Blood and Wine DLC.
It's excellent.
I know. That's why I want to play it.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. You can buy a house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With your wife, whoever that might be. Right? I saw that.
You know, I don't know. Yennefer showed up for me. I've only ever seen... Triss can show up or something.
It wouldn't make sense if she didn't.
Yeah. But I played it with Yennefer because Yennefer is the right choice. Anyways. No, but I'm expecting big things out of the Elden Ring DLC. Elden Ring, obviously, was one of the biggest games of all time and huge in 2022. Winning Game of the Year at the Game Awards and being...
No, it wasn't even top 3 for us, was it? No, it wasn't because of my dumbass, not putting it on the list. Kept it out of the top 3 right there. I think it was number 4. I think it was number 4. I'd have to. Oh, I have the fucking notes right here. I can just look it up. But no, I'm expecting big things here, man. It's been 2 years. Since the release of Elden Ring, they've put out lots and lots of updates, since then, and improved performance and stuff. There hasn't been any content updates, though, correct? Like, nothing content-wise? Maybe new items or something?
Yes, they updated the multiplayer, which I need to jump back into. They made it way easier to get in, like, traditional multiplayer matches. Honestly, very similar to what they have with Armored Core 6, where it kind of does, like, a little preamble at the beginning. I think Elden Ring has that. It certainly is structured the same way, starting off on one end of the other. They've added, because that opened with like these coliseums in the area, they opened up across the maps, as well as tons of weapon updates that completely changed some of the properties of attacks and weapons that you can use. So they've done work to it, but this would be the first time they've done something truly substantial that'll get a lot of eyes on it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm totally wrong. Elden Ring was in fact in our top 3 last year. I guess, depending on how you talk about it. 2022. It was in our top 3 for 2022. It was number 3.
Who was number 1 again? God of War.
God of War.
Yeah.
God of War. Because it was on all 3 of our lists. It was number 1 for, I believe, both me and Phil. It was just, because it's got 29.
Yeah,
I wrote down the point totals and 29 points for God of War Ragnarok. Because you had it at number 2.
Yeah, I did. And I remember Phil was like, cracking his back because he was like, I don't know if I should put Elden Ring at number 1 or God of War, and he decided God of War.
It was the topic of conversation. It was between those two. For certain. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to just hear what happens, to just see what happens. Am I going to play it myself? Absolutely not. Will you, though?
Oh, you gotta be fucking kidding me. I'm going to be on there day 1. And by the way, I should note a source of pride for me. Last year, when we didn't know when this was exactly coming out, Tavin got it on his fantasy critic pick.
Yeah.
Something that we've started again this year,
yeah.
where we've drafted games and, hopefully they get high scores on Open Critic because that will determine who gets a free game. And 2 free games.
Ladies, that was the deal. Phil was talking about maybe just like $100 buy-in or some shit.
Oh, he would say that now.
He wants to say it now. Right. Because his list fucking sucks. Isn't that right? We fucking got this shit, don't we, my boy?
We do. It's between you and me. And I got Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree.
Yeah.
Because I remember the feeling of you getting that. The guy who's not a fan of Elden Ring.
Yeah.
It hurt.
Because I got it before it was even given a title. It was Elden Ring's unannounced DLC or whatever. That's when I got it.
So thank you, Miyazaki, for not coming out with it that year. Please come out with it this year. Please.
How badly are we gonna crush this motherfucker this year, bro? It's gonna be so bad.
He's got so comfortable with his first spot last year. His comfortable one.
Dude, have you seen the updated page in a while?
Do more?
He's got 2 slots.
No, yeah, that's 2. He jumped the gun.
He's jumped the gun. Now, granted, there's some slots on that page that are not going to get filled, but the problem is when will they be announced as not being filled? Or not releasing this year, rather. That's the problem he's going to have to fight. Metal Gear Solid Delta, not a fucking shot in hell that game is coming out this year. Phil, go kick rocks, you fucking loser.
Hey, Phil, I know you're probably sitting pretty with your fiance or whatever they call that nowadays.
Gay.
Yeah, very gay. And I'm just here to tell you, you're going to lose. You've already lost. You fucking loser. Hey, come on. Waiting for the text tomorrow, huh? Come on. You watch this stuff, I don't.
Oh, he definitely does not get this deep into it.
No.
Absolutely not. You fucking loser. Anyways, Elden Ring, I think for sure is coming out this year, right? Like,
no,
there's no chance.
Be surprised if it didn't.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't want is for us to keep talking about fucking layoffs because this is way more fun to talk about.
Connor, we're going to.
I know we are. I know.
Now, Connor, the big 2 questions are: when does this update? When does this announcement happen? And when is it coming out?
Probably like in autumn.
Release date?
I'm wanting to say like a July summer update.
Yeah.
But I feel like they'd want more time on it because I'm expecting the scope to be big.
See, the thing is like surely it's being released this year. Surely, right?
I mean, hey,
so you're
development problems happen.
You're looking. I think autumn is probably safe. Sometime in autumn, maybe late fall or something. Maybe even early winter or something like that. Well, I guess winter is December 20th, but I think latest this releases is November. Sometime in November is the latest I can see this going.
That's when games start kind of slowing down. You only
Yeah.
have a couple of big releases, ideally, and
Yeah.
so they can make it even big. They already do good when
Yeah,
they
yeah.
announce this, but I think dominating that time of the year would be a good idea.
I think so as well. But I also think that this is going to be such a massive update. Again, on the level of Witcher 3 Blood and Wine. I think this is going to be such a massive update that like you have to put it out or you have to have a marketing beat for it in order to hit where it's going. Are the letters on these things fading? The letters are fading.
I look at that each time, and oh shit, maybe it is.
No, yeah. I mean, look at my
It
TV right
definitively
here.
is. Yeah, mine is too.
Yeah. That sucks.
Hand wash from now on.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what to do. Anyways, no,
gift, by
you
the
need a
way.
marketing lead up for this.
Yeah.
Like you need to be able to let the people know that, hey, turn on your Elden Ring, come back, please
Yeah.
come back. We spent a lot of time on this, and I imagine they're going to give something that is sizable to the original game. Like even obviously not going to be quite as big. I'd be shocked if they like double the size, but it would probably be, I don't know, maybe the size of an Armored Core 6.
Could be. Well, actually, that map is bigger than Elden Rings, I believe, because you're bigger.
Armored Core?
I believe so. The reason
It's all
why
broken up.
Yeah, but I think I remember seeing a post of someone like, I'm gonna compare the maps, putting on top of one another, and Armored Core is bigger because you're giant robots going through, smaller landscapes.
That's stupid. That's dumb. Just
They
because
think
the
about the
size of your
map.
character is huge, so they're blowing it up per scale model. That's ridiculous.
I mean, it would make sense when you see all the trees and how big you are compared to them.
I mean, yes,
Cars and whatnot.
Yes, but like you would have to. Yes, the size of the map is probably of all the maps put together is probably bigger. Yes, but that's just because your player character is bigger.
Yeah,
So everything is smaller.
yeah. That's how math works, Tavin.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean there's more geometry that you as a player can go through.
I don't know, man.
There's
Well,
not a shot in the world, Armored Core 6. If you lay out all of the maps and all of the levels, there's not a shot in the world that it is bigger than Elden Ring if you compare it 1-to-1.
probably not 1-to-1.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But that's not what we do. We just compare it as it is to how the other one is.
No, you're doing extra math. You're doing extra math to blow it up and make it seem bigger than it is. When you, come on
I'm
now,
not
let's-
doing
let's
extra
be, let's
math.
be,
I'm
let's
saying
be,
someone else
let's
calculated
be
that.
real. Anyways, no, but it's probably going to be about like in terms of the amount of content in it, probably about the size of Armored Core 6, I imagine.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to it.
Maybe a little less than Armored Core 6, but you should be expecting what 12 hours of content,
More.
20,
Yeah.
yeah.
Minimum, probably. No,
Yeah.
I wouldn't need minimum. I would just say that's probably what they
You
would
keep
go.
bringing up the old hunters for Bloodborne. How much content is that
Well, that's I can look it
in
up.
terms of hour count? Yeah, 'cause
it's pretty bulky.
Yeah.
And that's something that's not as wide as what
I mean, it's
Elden
hard
Ring
to
is.
judge. The Dark Souls games usually get DLCs and so forth, but I don't ever hear anything about Dark Souls 3.
Oh, amazing DLC.
I'm sure it is. But I don't hear that as like, oh man, go play that. I hear that from Bloodborne players.
The problem is that it's kind of a 2-part DLC.
Yeah.
The Painted World of Ariandel, which was like, oh, it's a good DLC. And then you have
Sizably, what's the biggest
Ring City. Oh, wait, as far as like
individual DLC pack that you bought and paid?
Ring City, I would say. The second DLC for Dark Souls 3.
Yeah?
Because it's a whole like city. There's more bosses overall.
okay.
Maybe the same. Let me see. Playtime. I want to... Because I'm curious. I actually can't remember. off the
Yeah,
top
it's a
of my
lot.
head.
It's a lot.
Oh, shit. Only like 5 to 8 hours. I'm going to say 8 for like
In
normal
Old
people.
Hunters?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It seems longer because trial and error, and it has some of the...
Because you fucking suck.
Hey,
You're a
in my
trash-ass
fairness,
player, admit it.
in my fairness, it has what is considered before Millennia, like the second hardest boss in all of Souls series, and just really, really good hard bosses on its base level, even without comparing it. So, however many times you're gonna have to go through that, it's gonna take longer than 8 hours. I feel. At least mine was. Shut up.
I'm very interested. So you think 20 hours minimum for Elden Ring still?
Yeah,
Interesting.
I think they'll make a whole entire like separate world.
It's been
in the
2
same-
years.
Yeah, it has been. And I think, if you just look at regions in Elden Ring, they take about that long to complete, do everything in it.
That's a big game.
Yeah, it's a very big game.
Very big.
I spent on my first playthrough where I tried to do as much as I possibly could. 167 hours. Maybe I got into 174. So
Nice.
yeah, it's
Good
been a long
content. God damn, they're fucking good.
Yeah.
And they only charge $60 for that?
Yeah.
60 or 70?
It's almost as if 60. It's almost as if you don't need to charge 70s, and that's only for greedy purposes. But couldn't. That's ridiculous. These companies that we talk about laying off entire
if
core
they
of their
charge,
workers.
would you be mad if they charged $100?
Yeah.
Really?
Because they're making tons of money.
You said nearly 2 hours. You said nearly 200 hours of content on your first playthrough.
I would pay it. Don't get me wrong. I
Yeah.
would pay it. But I would know if you charge this for $60, as they did, they would be one of the biggest selling games of that year, which they were. And so they didn't need to.
How much is Shadow of the Erdtree?
$40, if at
Yeah.
the most. 30 was the original Old Hunters DLC, and that was a $60 game, Bloodborne, I should say. So I feel like they would probably bump that at least up to $40. That would be justifiable if it's like 20 hours
2
long.
years of work at least. Yeah, I'm curious if they would do 50.
They might, and that'd be justifiable as well. Because, considering all of the games that we play that are under the length of Elden Ring, which, as I said, was like upwards of 100 hours,
Yeah.
and charge $60 for that, $50 for a good sized game, the length of a regular sized game.
I mean,
would make
the
sense.
pricing model is so interesting to talk about off the back of God of War Ragnarok Valhalla being free to play and being about 10 hours of content, 8 to 10, maybe 6 if you're really putting pedal to the metal there. But I didn't. I probably put about 8 to 10 hours into that piece of content right there, and it was a sizable piece of content and so forth. And that was to be a free update for that is impressive. Now I'm not expecting that from a From Software title at all or anything like that, but it does engage in the conversation of if you're 20 hours. How much is that worth? How much work went in? How much art? And how much are you willing to charge? How valuable is that product you're willing to put out? Now, again, a team like FromSoft, who consistently put out super high quality titles and usually give us way more content than a lot of these other games out here for the same price or arguably even cheaper, I would be totally fine if they upped their prices and said, no, man, we're charging X, we're charging 80, we're charging 90, for full games, games, that is. Maybe not for titles like Armored Core 6, but titles like Elden Ring, I think totally understandable to charge even up to $100 for that type of game.
My issue is it stays the same, which is that these companies make tons of money off of $60 games alone. A $10 price increase was unnecessary. Once again, and I'll point to the layoffs we constantly talk about. It didn't impact those. If anything, when they increased it to $70, I know there's not an actual correlation between these two things, but it also
There's no way they're making less money now. There's
none, and they still lay off people, and so any price increase beyond the regular $60, I think, is on its face bullshit. And
the argument immediately becomes from the executives. I would not personally make this argument, but the argument does immediately become. Without that $70 increase, we would have laid off more people.
And my response to them was, before you even consider that, maybe take a pay cut, you greedy pig. And then they would, they'd probably be like, well, actually, the worst parts about these people that I'm sure if you talk to them on a face-to-face basis, they're polite, they're kind, but at the end of the day, deep within their soul, they're unempathetic. They probably care. I would assume they care less for human life than the average person does. And
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I do. I don't think these people, as terms of human beings, should be given the benefit of the doubt of them being good people. Do I think we should harass them on that face alone? Maybe. Depends on what they do.
Hold on.
I'm saying if you're going like diddling kids, I think you could get some harassment on your way.
Yeah, sure, fine,
but
whatever.
Bad business decisions like all of these all of these CEOs, Lars Wingefors do, we shouldn't give the perception that these guys are kind in any way. They're very, at the end of the day, they can cut people's jobs and just give, half-assed emails of like, sorry, my bad. I don't know. Like, think of the kind of person that could do that. Could you? On that level? Could I? I certainly
Me?
couldn't.
No.
Yeah.
But that's why we're not in there.
But I think most people couldn't do that. And you could still make hard decisions.
Yeah.
And not be just so totally ruthless with it. Because as we covered, they don't take any pay cuts at all.
Okay, well, just to entertain this conversation and what's happening, we typically agree that Phil Spencer has been a shining light of an example of an executive in his position at Xbox.
Yes, and that studio, they haven't been known to lay off people in
They
that.
laid off people last year.
Yeah, and in those cases,
Now,
pay
granted,
cut.
maybe that came down from Microsoft saying, hey, you have to cut a percentage. Because remember, Microsoft laid off, I believe the number was 10,000 people across all of its sectors.
Yeah.
Fuck ton of fucking people. So, and then Xbox certainly felt that. There were layoffs at Xbox last year. There just were. But where does this conversation lie with Phil Spencer? If someone who we outwardly seems to have the best interest of his people and the best interest of gamers at heart, and I would say he does, and I would say he's one of the better examples of these executives that we're talking about out there. Where does the line get drawn for guys like him?
well, you see, Phil Spencer, he's an exception. Lars Windforce doesn't come out and establish that same camaraderie that Phil Spencer does.
I agree.
Yeah, and Phil Spencer on his own, you can talk to him on a more human level, since I actually see him as being one of those better people who, like I said, when you're at the head of a company, you got to make hard decisions. Layoffs are going to be included into that.
He also publicly ate some humble pie.
Yeah, he did. For Redfall.
Like it or not, buys him, my book, buys him respect.
And that's why you could talk to someone like him on a more human level. I think someone like Lars Windforce, they just see dollar signs, and that's their prime goal. Phil Spencer clearly does as well. He has to.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have that position if he didn't. But I feel like you could argue with him or convince him to not only for him to take pay cuts, but all of the nameless, faceless board of directors who undoubtedly make a lot of money as well while you have layoffs going on. Really, like I said, he's an exception to that rule.
Well, he also surrounds himself with a team of people who are upfront and personable and who are relatable. You can name people over at the Xbox leadership side, whether it's Matt Booty, whether it's Sarah Bond, the stuff like that. Whereas like
Blizzard, before they were acquired by Microsoft, Bobby Kotick, that was it.
It was Bobby Kotick just because he was at the front of the ship.
And then look at him, he's a scumbag. You can just look at him and tell that.
And he's out of here. Get him out of here.
Yeah, and he paid nothing for any of his stuff, which...
Listen, man, we gotta take what we can here in these
conversations.
I
I take what we can, but I'm not going to be, happy and jumpy about it. But
that's fair. That's fair.
But
he's out of here.
He's out of here.
That's important. Let's take our W's where we can. Bobby Kotick out.
That is true. We don't have to hear about him being involved in the game sector anymore.
Now let's continue this conversation with one other step forward. A company that doesn't seem as bad to work for, but definitely still has its like little money grubby, selfish things that are going on. Jim Ryan, maybe.
Yeah, once again, that's another person. I used Lars Windforce earlier.
Yeah.
He's another person. Unless I got like a better measure of him, I could once again say like, hey, don't you think that all of these layoffs are a little bit too heavy-handed, and you could start going into other directions? I would bring up the famous case of Nintendo, where they did take a pay cut.
Yeah.
Where, like, for example, those people, I could maybe not like them. I could see them as a bit more soulless in their decisions that they make, but ultimately they didn't do. They did the best they could.
Nintendo has come out in front multiple times, eating humble pie, taking pay cuts, all of the above. And I would say Nintendo now is at the strongest point possibly than they've ever been before.
They are. And once again, there's so many goddamn layoffs. We just talk about them so much. I forget about them in the moment. Jim Ryan's PlayStation, were there any major layoffs happening related to them? Because I can't think
all the time. I mean, the part of the big Insomniac leak at the end of last year, we saw that Insomniac was being forced to lay off a percentage. I forget the number now, but was being forced to lay off, I think it was like 20%.
And you see, that's where the other issue comes up, because we know how good PS5 sales have been.
Yeah.
And so on the end of that, and it's another successful year, more successful than Microsoft, for example, of the games that you make selling well, why are you having layoffs? Why are those the first things you jump to?
Well, now, again, the conversation with PlayStation, I think, becomes very interesting and a little bit multifaceted. Well, I guess the whole conversation of every company is multifaceted because you have to consider all these angles.
Some less so than others, but still.
Yeah. Well, Jim Ryan's on his way out. We've got an intermediate CEO of PlayStation Studios happening right now, and then we'll find someone else to fill that role. Hopefully, you hope from the gamer's perspective, it's not going to be another businessman like Jim Ryan. Jim Ryan, not a gamer. Not for him. He's a guy. He's a businessman. He's out here to make a buck. Now, his tenure at PlayStation and as CEO of SIE, I think overall has been a positive one. You know, he took over during the PS4 or near the launch of the PS4 generation, or something like that. So the start of the PS4 generation, not necessarily his doing, but the last half certainly is because of him. And I think, you know, you look at examples of Last of Us Part 2, of Ghost of Tsushima, of Horizon Forbidden West, God of War, both God of Wars, and you would say, hey, that's a successful run company. Santa Monica, again, putting out Valhalla for free. That's under Jim Ryan's watch. You know, Jim Ryan could have come down and said, no, players have to pay $20 for this. And we all would have gladly paid for that. But it was free, and that's under Jim Ryan's watch. But then you also, so you see all this success, and you go, oh, well, that makes sense. But then you also see PlayStation Studios announcing that they've got 12 live service games under the hood, and then now that's been dialed back to 6, and so forth. But now you look at things, and a lot of great acquisitions, the Insomniac acquisition, the development of Haven Studios, the Blue Point acquisition. These are great acquisitions in theory. Of course, you know, now we look back on it, and reportedly Insomniac's got to, you know, dial down their staff, which is unfortunate after making 4 back-to-back anger hits. I just keep thinking of them. You know, Spider-Man, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Spider-Man Miles Morales, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man Remastered, if you want to even throw that title in there. You know, that made them money for sure. You know, Insomniac continues to be this money generator, and to have them, you know, have layoffs is questionable at best. And then you look at all these live service titles. All of this is from the efforts of a Jim Ryan, coming down and saying, hey, go make these games. And then now we look at Naughty Dog and how they were going to lead the charge with their Last of Us multiplayer title. That has been canceled now. So now it's a question of like, all right, well, how healthy was that guy for this business?
Yeah.
I would say overall net positive, but definitely some choices made that I hope there's a pivot.
Well, we'll have to see whoever comes in to replace him.
We will indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching and listening. This has been the Two Penny Gamescast, episode 182. Remember, you can catch us every Tuesday, 8 a.m. Central Time. I think I said Monday at the top of the episode. Force a habit, you know. Tuesday, 8 a.m. Central Time, youtube.com/@2pennygames, and mainstream podcast services of your choice. Remember to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below some comments and topics of discussion that you would like to bring forward to the show. We would love to bring 2 pennies of the audience in, 2 cents of the audience in. Let us know how you felt about all the topics that we discussed today. I'm very excited to put this one out. Connor, congratulations. This was a great episode of the Two Penny Gamescast.
I thought so as well.
I think this is one of our just overall best episodes that we've ever done in the 3+ years that we've been doing this. So thank you so much for your efforts and congratulations on your work today. It was fantastic.
As well. Ladies
and gentlemen, remember you can also catch the Piggy Bank, our casual gaming podcast, which was a lot of fun until we got rudely interrupted by some fire alarms. Saturday, 8 a.m. Central Time. And there should be a hype episode coming out this week. Again, Phil's continuation of his first playthrough of Mass Effect 1 from back in the day, going live on the channel on Wednesday. So make sure you subscribe and keep an eye out for that. We've got great new content and videos coming out all the time. We are doing a reaction to the Xbox Developer _Direct this Thursday. I do imagine that we will be streaming that, but you know, don't blame me. So make sure you follow us over at twitch.tv/2pennygames over there. Follow us on all the links down in the description down below. And until next time, have a great time. And Connor, say goodbye to the people.
Bye.